Thank you very much. Good on you guys. You're actually, you're finished now.
Okay.
You can go. Off you go. They usually go out the back for a cigarette. Okay, just kidding. Sit down, please. How are ya? In Audacious Church. Yes. This morning I said it's a great passage in Job where it says, I've heard of you by the hearing of my ear, but now my eye sees you. And that's what it's been like for me with Audacious Church, because Glenn has told me all about it. I've heard many things about you guys. I've watched you on television. You're pretty famous around the globe and all that stuff. But now to come and see how it all works and what you're doing is just extraordinary. What a great potential future you have. I should separate those two words. What a great potential you have and what a great future you have. Because as you look at what your pastors are leading you into and where God is taking you, it's very, very exciting. It's exciting for the city. It's exciting for this nation. It's exciting for countries beyond. In fact, actually, you and I get the privilege to go to some of the countries in Europe where we work together, like Germany. Your influence in Germany with your pastor going there and inputting into those churches there has been outstanding. We appreciate that. So you sort of touch other nations way beyond what you're doing just here in the city. And it's been a real privilege and honor. Sophie, nice to have you back after your travel. She took a holiday. While I was here, she thought I'll just go away because I know this guy and I'm getting out of here. She's been preaching somewhere else, but you guys have been great hosts. Your team have been fantastic. I can't ask for any more. Thank you so much for my time here. Appreciate it. I want to go to now a verse in the Bible that I consider one of the saddest verses you'll probably ever read. There are sad verses that you read in Scripture, but this one's pretty sad. It's found in the book of Genesis, and it's in Genesis 25:27. I don't know which screen it'll be up on, but it'll be up on a screen. There it is. Here it is here. So the boys grew, and Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a mild man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac, that's his father, loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was very weary. And Esau said to Jacob, please feed me with some of that red stew, for I am so weary. Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, sell me your birthright as of this day. And Esau said, look, I'm about to die. So what does this birthright to mean? What does it mean? Then Jacob said, swear to me as of this day. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank, arose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Now that's pretty sad stuff. And I'll tell you why. I'll explain the context. First of all, the birthright here in times that we're talking about was very, very significant. This was not just an inheritance. This was the right to everything the father had and owned as a firstborn son. Esau was the firstborn son. The birthright was all the stuff that his dad had. It included cattle, lands, the people that worked for him. But more than that, also the future potential that the father saw in his estate. So it was the whole dreams of the dad came to the firstborn son. So it was about the now and the future. But he was sacrificing this birthright, if you like, for a very simple meal. Now you've got to understand, this story is linked to a whole lot of stuff that went before, because Rebekah, the mum, she's pregnant, the Bible tells us, with Esau and Jacob, and they're twins. Now there's a fight, apparently, according to Scripture, going on in the stomach about who would be firstborn. Even as Esau is being born, believe it or not, Jacob, the Bible says, grabs hold of his leg, and they're born together at the same time. But Esau was first. So therefore, he's the firstborn son. But Jacob is so close, he feels he's missed his opportunity. He wished it was him. So for many, many years, he connived to get his birthright that he believed was his. So this is what happens. Esau, a man of the field, he went out and he hunted, and he would take game and he would eat of the game, and that would be his sustenance. So he's out not for a day just pop-shotting at things. He's out trying to find some food, maybe a few days. What the goal was, of course, was to catch it or kill it and then eat it and then find sustenance for himself, while Jacob is sitting in tents making stew. He's out there for this. So he can't find any game. He's a hunter. He's a rough man. He wants to conquer his prey. He can't find any. Over a period of time, he gets really, really hungry. You know that hunger you have where your stomach starts to rumble? When you see somebody eat an apple and you hear the crisp sound of the apple break in their teeth and the juices begin to flow around the mouth and then it dribbles out their mouth, you just feel all of that. And that's what he was feeling like, so hungry. His stomach is rumbling, and he walks in the tent and he smells this stew that this brother of his is cooking, and it starts to captivate him, and he wants it. He wants it so bad that Jacob sets him up right now and says, you'll get it on the condition everything that's yours becomes mine. Sell what you have, and I'll give you this lunch that you need. Now that's sad stuff, because what happened is, as you read, Esau despised what he had in his destiny for a cheap lunch. That's fascinating to me. How can that happen? So I thought I'd just Google around, as you do, to find out what was this thing, this meal that he gave up everything for. And I've got a picture of this I want to show you that he gave up his whole birthright for. This is it here. That's it. That actually is rubbish. To be honest with you, I can find that on a Manchester street at 2 in the morning on a Saturday night. That stuff does not look good at all. Would you agree? I don't know what it smells like, but looking at it, I can guess. But it's not the sort of stuff I would think you'd give up your destiny for. But he did. You know, we might think this is a crazy story, but I want to tell you something. People do this every day. People give up their potential future for a really cheap lunch. They give up stuff in their destiny for a cheap relationship, for a quick fix, for a new job or career that looks good, but actually it's just a cheap lunch. I've heard people say things like this: I've been waiting for a church like Audacious for so long to come to my city. I'm so glad that we've got it here. And they connect into the life of the church. And then there's an offer for a job with a bit more salary somewhere in another town. And you ask them, this thing you dreamed of being a part of, is that present where you're going? And they say, no, not really. I don't know of any churches where I'm going. You think, well, don't sell out for a cheap lunch over there when your destiny's probably here. That doesn't make any sense. You have next Sunday what's called Vision Sunday. What does that mean? It means this house has vision for something greater than the moment. It's bigger than us. It's something we can connect to, but people will sow out or get out of that opportunity or maybe that experience in time for a cheap lunch somewhere else. What about relationships? You meet people who have done a great job, I think, of keeping themselves and protecting themselves for the right person, the one person, and then somehow they get caught up in some relationship and sell it all out for a cheap moment. Doesn't make sense. We have potential and we have stuff before us that we know. You might have even had a prophetic word from God. You might have had something spoken into your life at some time, and it's there. It's not accomplished yet, but it's part of who you are. And then suddenly another opportunity comes along and you just forget that and sell out for a cheap lunch. I met people who have had words from God, from the scriptures, spoken to them clearly about where they're meant to be and where they're going, but made a dumb decision along the way. Let me tell you this. This is actually a story of just making dumb decisions. And that's not what it is it, to be, a disciple of Christ? It's to realize I have a destiny and a future, and I'm going to get to that thing. I'm going to make that thing happen. I'm walking towards it. Now listen, sometimes when you read this verse, or I've heard people say this verse, this inheritance thing or birthright is about heaven. That on earth is one thing, but our birthright is heaven. And they think when they make a dumb decision, it affects their salvation or their eternal place. That's not what I'm talking about today. That has nothing to do with this equation. Let me tell you, I worked it out this way. If Jesus Christ was willing to die, pay the price, and give everything he could for me to have righteousness with God, and I paid nothing for it, I did nothing for it, then it's probably nothing I can do to lose it either. Does that make sense? You know that I think that part of life is pretty secure, but what I'm worried about is what happens tomorrow and the next day and the day after. And maybe in the next 40 years, I know I'm heaven bound, but what about this earth? I said this morning, I think discipleship is understanding how we do this Christian life for 70 years. Not whether I enjoy the service on Sunday and make a decision on my feeling on that, but I want to be here 70 years, finish my course, do my life, and then be with God in eternity. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about those moments. I'm talking about what life is about and how easy it is to make sometimes some really dumb decisions. Do you know, people often say to me, I go to churches and they'll often drag me away. This is why they drag me out of the room, so I won't talk to people. But they talk to me and they'll come up and they'll get you in the dark corner and they'll say things like this: we don't preach enough holiness in this church. And they tend to do a little wobble of the neck and then look off. And I look over there, there's nothing there but the holiness. Or, how's this one? We don't talk about sin enough. And you go, what are you looking? Is there some angel over there? You can't see anything. They're looking off. It's just a strange thing. This guy came to me and he said one day, I just don't think we teach about holiness enough. And I said, so what has your pastor been teaching? He's been preaching 10 messages on how to make a good decision. I said, well, that is actually holiness. Because holiness is not an experience. It is actually a long-term commitment to make biblical decisions so that it affects your life in a right and proper way, and you will be holy. But please don't tell me it's some sort of thing that falls on and you're holy. You've got to make complete commitment to the Word of God to make decisions that follow and abide by His Word for the long term. That's the key to holiness. So friends, I want to talk to you tonight about these things. I want to talk to you about how do we make sure we keep our destiny that's before us, and all of you have it. All of it is a seed in your life. All of you have potential in God. When you consider a crowd this size and a church this big overall, when you put it all together, the possibilities are endless of the potential, not in individuals, but when the collective comes together as well. The possibilities are endless. Now, here's the interesting thing, and it's from my own experience. I've noticed that if I do make a dumb decision, God has a way of bringing me back onto the path. It's actually called grace. Grace brings me back onto the path, but sometimes it takes a bit longer to get there because I fluffed it up at the intersection. Now, the best way I can describe this, many years ago, when I was younger, I used to think that the plan of God was one plan. There's only one ever plan for your life, only one. And if you didn't get that plan, you had to marry the right person, you had to live in the right place, you had to do the right thing. In fact, actually it got so detailed, you had to wake up in the morning and pray about the plan every day, and you had to pray, Lord, shall I brush my teeth this morning? And He would say things like, if you don't, you'll have no friends. Good idea. Brush my teeth. And you got down to this detail. And I used to think there's one plan. The trouble was, if you got out of the one plan, it was really hard to get back into it. I don't think there is a plan. I think it's just grace that works with us as we go along in life. And I'll explain it so you understand it this way. We didn't have these tools to explain it this way. But imagine a GPS system. The genius of a GPS system is you get in your car and you plug your destination into the car. And this thing, it's got a little torch or light that goes round, while it's sorting out how to get there the fastest possible way. And it starts to work it out. But you decide, those things are really annoying. Have you noticed how those GPS systems are always a woman's voice telling us where to go? It's just like that's life now, isn't it? Women are just telling us where to go all the time. In your car, you hear the voice, go this way, go right. Sometimes I just say, no, I'm not doing it. Just because you keep telling me that. Sometimes when I'm really lonely, I just drive in the car and talk to her, and she says, turn right, and I say, I've been wanting to talk to you about that, actually. It's really interesting. We all know that women should not be guiding a GPS system because they cannot read maps. No, they cannot read maps. They read them. I don't care, ooh, boo, chuck things, especially money. But I don't care what you say. It's true, they read them upside down, and then they they go by their feelings, but men much more accurate, aren't they? So this GPS system, it's sort of, well, maybe not. I'm joking, guys. Don't look at me like that. Like I'm gonna get done over at the end of this. Here's what happens. This GPS system, you set it, And you can go and follow what it says, and that will take you to the destination in the quickest possible time. Or you can choose to not do it, and when it says turn left, turn right. Now, I've done this in my car, and I've never heard it yet say, okay, you want to turn right? Fair enough, you do that. I'm not talking to you again. But that's how some people think God is. As soon as he says left and they go right, they go, well, God is not talking to me anymore. Actually, what he does is reconfigure where we are and help us get back on course. It's called grace, so we can get where we need to go. That's the GPS system. That's God's nature. And he starts to work it. So you decide to turn right, and the thing reconfigures and said, now down here do a U-turn, but you carry on straight. Do you know that thing will never ever stop communicating to you? It'll never ever say, ever, right, I'm sorry, I've just given up with you. Never. And that's the nature of God. We all make dumb decisions, and we have in the past. I've made some rips and waters of decisions that are dumb. But God's grace brings me back. Here's the thing I've thought to myself, though. Wow, to be honest with you, if I just had to set the course right and stayed with it, I would have got there a lot quicker. And I wouldn't have bothered with all this round track stuff. I would have just got there. See, it's one thing to have destiny. It's another thing to reach it in the time allotted you have to reach it. And to get there and do it. My wife and I, we're New Zealanders, as he rightly explained, although I've got over that now, had healing of the memories, lots of counselling, and I'm all good. Fine now, I'm an Australian guy. I love being Australian. I just blame everything on being Australian. When I mess up, I just say I'm an Australian. And they go, oh yeah, that's all right then. You come from down under, don't you? You're an idiot, so that's fine. The Europeans, I've got away with it for 20 years, Glenn. It's a brilliant, you can't say that because you're British. You think you're an Australian, but you're not really. You're sort of, it doesn't matter. So when I first became a Christian, I was 17. This was only about 12 years ago. I was 17. And I became a Christian. I've had a rough life. Most mums used to drag their kid along by the arms. Mine dragged me by the feet, and my face was in the gravel all the time. Okay, so I'm becoming a Christian, and I immediately sense this strong impression. God speaking to me, you're going to move to Australia. Now, this is something I'd dreamed of anyway, and I met Linda at the same time. She was 15, I was 17. I got saved and pretty much met straight after that. She came from a very good line of Pentecostal Christians, 5 generations, in fact, and I was the rough chuck-in from nowhere that came out of the blue that didn't have any, line like that at all. I was just a rough new Christian, and we got together and we started to date. Her father was Danish. She's actually got Danish blood in her. They'd moved there some years before. She was the first child born in New Zealand. The others are all born in Denmark. So I wanted to take her out. And I went to her father and sat down and said, I'd like to take your daughter out. She's 15 or 17. And he grunted on like Danes do. All I heard was no about 15 times. So I got the no bit right. I didn't get the rest. I didn't know what he was talking about. He just said no. So I took her out and I said to her, which he said I couldn't do, but I did, took her out and I said, if we're going to do, this is what he said, you can't see my daughter for 2 years. You're not allowed to sit with her in church. You can't see her. You're not going to see her for 2 years. So as a 19, she'd be 17, right? I'm thinking 2 years. Now, I abided by that decision, not for most of the time, but I took my girlfriend out and I said, if we're going to do this thing, you need to know this thing. First of all, I am called to full-time service. I want to serve God full-time with my life. And you need to know that. If we're going to wait 2 years, you need to know that. She said, do you know what? I am too. The funny part is my wife started her churches went into ministry like she has about 8-9 years ago. People say to me, is it a surprise to you? No, that was something we talked about at 15. So for her to be doing what she's doing now is just a natural consequence of where she's at. And she just wanted to bring up the kids and do that and go off into ministry. So I said, the second thing is you need to know is I want to move to Australia. She said, I'm called to Australia as well. I want to go there as well. So she became an Australian nationalised citizen as well. And I'm like, wow, this is a pretty good start. And I thought, this is how it'll work. So you need to know that's where it's going to go. So Australia was big time stuff. We were praying about it. I wanted to go there so quickly as I could. And we ended up getting married. Some 2.5 years later, we got married. Very young, 20 and 18. And as you do, you buy a house. In New Zealand, you bought a house. People complain today about interest rates, 6-7%. Let me tell you what the interest rate was in 1979, 1980. We were paying 23% interest on the first mortgage, 18% interest on the second mortgage, 15% interest on the third mortgage, and her father lent us some money as a deposit, and we were paying zillion% interest on that one. The interest rates today are unbelievably low when you think about what they were like in those days. So we bought this tiny, you've been there, you know what they're like, fibrolite rectangles, called it our home, and we moved in. But at the same time, we wanted to go to Australia as fast as we could. We just wanted to get there. So we moved into this house. It was a fantastic house. I shouldn't tell you this story, but I will. We were well, my wife was a bit green about gardening at the time. And I had some mates around. We were doing the grass on the garden. So we laid all the lawn out. There's about 5 of them. We got a tractor and laid all the lawn out, got it all done. And in those days, you would coat the seed of the grass in red lead. So when you threw the seed on the ground, it was red. But we'd painted our house red and white. Don't ask me why, but we had. So red bottom, red trim, white in the middle. So I'm throwing the seed out. When it's all finished, the grass and the ground is all red. My wife comes out. She's about 19 or something, 18 at the time. She yells out at me, "Who decided we were having red grass?" My mates just walked off into the bushes. They were gone. They knew this is going to be great. So I thought, I'll just play this one right out. I said, a man has to make the decision sometimes in his own house. And I believe red would look brilliant with the trim in the house. She went in crying. I had to go fix that up. Never got over it. Of course, the grass didn't grow red. It came green. That's just a little story. Obviously, it doesn't mean anything to you, so I won't go on about it. We got the grass down. We got into the house. We were there a short time, not even a year and a half, and we're praying about going to Australia. It's the biggest thing on our heart and life, and somebody had set us up for this. We had contacts in Australia we were working with. We couldn't wait to get moving. But in the process, in our life, we'd built this house, and we'd used all our money on the house, so everything was secondhand. These days, my kids, when they do this stuff, they just buy everything new. But we didn't. We had secondhand carpet, secondhand curtains, secondhand furniture, and down from the salvos. And this carpet we had was my dad's Axminster, which was actually red, believe it or not. He'd pulled it up and we'd laid it in our house. Can you imagine? He had 30-year-old Axminster and we laid it down in our lounge. The one thing I wanted to do was get that stinking Axminster out of the house. So I saved up enough money to go and pay a deposit on some beautiful new Berber carpet, wool, pure wool. I couldn't wait to get my toes into this carpet and feel the wool. We'd spent ages preparing this and saving for it and worked out in the budget we could do this. We paid the deposit. I came home that night. The phone rings, and it's the guy in Australia and says, "Mate, we have a job all set up. Church is ready to go. Come over now. You've got to be here in 3 months." Do you know what I said to him? You won't believe this is what I said to him. "What about the carpet?" He said, "What carpet? What are you flipping talking about carpet for?" I said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. Don't worry about the carpet. It's nothing. And I turn around, and my wife is hearing all this. She's starting to pack the house down. She's packing stuff up. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "We're going to Australia. This is what we believe for." And you know what I said to her? "What about the carpet?" And she said, "Who cares about the carpet?" I said, "Well, we need to just feel the carpet. Can't we just get the carpet and just have it?" And so, do you know, she packed the house in no time at all. It took me 3 days to work that one through. I walked around the house and went, "Oh, God." And this is sort of prayers praying, "Oh, God, couldn't I just have the carpet for a year? And then we could go after the carpet's been down a year. And I could just feel it in the toes." And I mean, how stupid can you get? That's a cheap lunch. Because our destiny wasn't in carpet, it was in Australia. Now, guess what? I know I would have got there. I know that I would have got there. But I wouldn't have got there in the timing I got there. That was our destiny, but there's a quick route and a slow route. And the slow route, I would have had nice carpet for a year, but I'll tell you, after 6 weeks, I would have got bored with that carpet. And I would have been thinking to myself, why aren't I in Australia? And my mate would have said, that's come and gone now, we can't make that work. But we'll wait a while and maybe some other opportunity will come up. I would have got there. But why throw your destiny away for a cheap lunch? And it's something we face almost perennially. It's always before us, isn't it? It's called temptation sometimes in the Bible. That it's just there, and in a moment you can be tempted to do something and you sell out for a cheap lunch. Now, God's grace and His GPS system will always get you back on track. I love that about God. He'll always get you back. And there's people in here tonight who you've made dumb decisions in the past and you've wondered what it's all meant and how it all works out, and you've seen God's grace in your life and you're grateful for it. You're here today because of it. But there's others that are sitting here tonight, and you maybe have made dumb decisions, come for the first time now or maybe a few times, and you're wondering how God can ever fix up the stuff that you've decided in your life, and you're thinking, you've got this idea, well, the roof would fall in if I went to church, or I don't know what God would do with me. Let me help you here. He is the great GPS system of the sky, and His grace is enough alone to get you back on track, to get you into the things that you're called to do, and to complete the journey in your life. Just acknowledge that and connect to Him and get started on the process. That's all it takes. I love that about God. And after 40 years, 42 years of being a Christian, you see it so often. We sometimes call Him the God of the second chance. But I just love to think of Him as the God of grace, who actually reconfigures wherever we are to get us back to where we need to be. Isn't that a wonderful thing? But again, I would repeat to you, why would we bother to sell out for a cheap lunch? You know what I reckon? I reckon what happened here is he made no margin in his life. This guy chose, well, he was at his weakest moment, wasn't he really? Really hungry. He hadn't succeeded in what he wanted to do. He probably felt a little bit down on himself, and he walks in, it's all prepared, it's all there. And I think sometimes we don't leave enough margin for those moments. Space in our life. We don't have enough space in our life. And I was told as a young Christian something I thought was really good. First of all, never make a major decision in the middle of a crisis, and never make a major decision in your holidays. They're the two most extreme periods of time where nothing's normal and you always make a dumb one. And I think that's really true. Because in your holidays, everything's surreal and it's the way it should be. But you've got to get back to real life. You've got to get back to the momentum of life and learning to make space. So many people just haven't learnt the principle of leaving room. Do you know God talks about this in the creation moment? He called it the Sabbath. That means space. And I don't know how you work that out, but make space. So when those decisions come, you've got space in your head, space in your heart to observe, reflect, and be very careful what you do next. But when you're in that stress moment and there's no space, you jump in to the free lunch. With this no margin thing. I used to drive a BMW. Loved my BMW, back-wheel drive. In Denmark, you can do 130, 140 Ks on the highway. In Germany, 2 hours from my place, you can just go as fast as you like. You'd get that Beamer down there, you'd put your foot down, and that thing would go up to 200 K, 230. It was a dream. And they'd just hold the road. You'd be driving on the road and a couple of trucks in front of you. You'd pull out, you'd put your foot down on the accelerator, and the car would just take off. You'd feel it. It just had space. But I don't drive a BMW anymore. I drive a Suzuki Swift. It's a tragedy. It's a bean can on wheels. If it's raining really hard, you can't hear anyone talk in the car. And when you're behind a whole lot of trucks and you put your foot down on that highway, it tells you off. Please don't do that. It hurts. You can hear it in the engine. It starts whining. And you pull out, and the thing's not going any faster, but the trucks are now moving faster than you. So you actually start doing this in the car. Okay, everybody, start doing this. And you do get some speed up, and then you get past the truck really slowly. You've got a whole lot of cars behind you, and then the truck driver's looking at you like, what are you doing? And sorry, mate, I'm in a Suzuki Swift. There's no space in the Suzuki Swift. There's no room for it to hit the pedal and say, I can do this. And that's the reason sometimes we make the dumb decisions. Because we don't have that reflective moment, just pulling back and saying, actually, this is a cheap lunch. Do you know this message is not about today, it's about tomorrow. It's about the next month. It's about the next year, and making sure that we remain consistent to who we're called to become. So we have no margin, and that just doesn't help us. Do you know, some time ago, I heard this, I didn't see it. I'm actually not a football fan. I'm not even a sports fan. The greatest pleasure I have in life is taking the Daily Mail. I like the Daily Mail. Opening it up and taking the sports section out and dumping it. Just love it. I actually have tweeted that and got into serious trouble. Just throwing the sports section away. I don't get sport at all. But I watch a bit of it and sort of try and keep up. But we won, Australia won, can you believe this? Gold medal in the Winter Olympics. This is fascinating because we don't even have winter. Really. Not like Scandinavians. How can you win gold in the Winter Olympics? It's just fascinating. This was many years ago. But we won gold in a sport called speed skating. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's definitely not speed skating. It's slow skating. This is how they do it. They're off like this, aren't they? And it's called speed skating. This is the stupidity of sport. Why would you call that? I'd call that slow motion skating. And here's another one, curling. Curling. They take a rock and throw it on ice and then run after it with some brushes. It's an Olympic sport. What is that? Do you know why it's called curling? Because that's what it does to your fingers and your toes when you're watching that thing. Start curling. Unbelievable sport. I reckon some Eskimo up in the middle of Norway chucked a rock once, about 400 years ago, on a flipping dry lake, an iced lake, and said, that'll be an Olympic sport one day. And then a guy came out and said, not till we do this. I don't get that game. Do you get that game? That just doesn't make sense. So we won this gold medal in the Olympics in speed skating. Now, this is a really interesting thing because actually we don't have any ice much in Australia. I don't know how that guy trained. It was false ice or something. But we won it. And he was competing about 4 other guys. Don't know if you've ever seen this. Fascinating. But he's down there in his lycra suit. Nothing more exciting than an Aussie in a lycra suit. Quite a shocker, actually, really, isn't it? He's down there and he's ready to go. The gun goes, off they go. He starts. He's going really fast now. But he's got his Aussie face on. The Aussies got a face, haven't they? Determination. I'm off. And he goes off. One guy bumps another one and they both fall over. The Aussie guy. They fall over. He just keeps going. The other guy hits the fence. He falls over. The other guy falls over. The Aussie guy just keeps going. He's doing a speed skating thing. He wins gold medal Olympic winter sport in speed racing because they all fell over. But he just kept going. I don't know what he must have felt like when he arrived at Sydney Airport. Comes out with gold medal hanging around his chest. Press are there. They're all there. Yeah, I won the gold medal. Yeah, and some bright spark yells, yeah, but they all fell over, mate. I can just see this. Some press guy, yeah, but they all fell over, mate. Doesn't matter, I got the flipping gold thing here. And he got this gold medal. That's the point, though, isn't it? So many of us fall over in our race, and the secret is to just keep going. The secret of success in this life is that you keep moving forward, that you keep going where you need to go. That's why they have Vision Sunday, because it's about where we need to go. It's about where we need to go. It's about who we are. But friends, every one of you is integral to winning that race. Every one of us here has to make sure we make a commitment to winning our race. And that's why I think that verse, actually, Jason, you read out this in the beginning of this session, is so important because it's my last verse too. You started with it, I'm going to end with it. In Hebrews chapter 10, it says this, great verse. For you have need of patience, just patience, that after you've done everything that's right, just doing the right decisions, the will of God is just right decisions, you will receive your promise. Do you get this? It's simple stuff, but it's so true. You have need to just wait, keep going forward as you've done the right things, and then in that moment, your promise, the birthright that belongs to you, will become yours. You will receive it into your life because you left margin, you kept moving forward. And friends, the greatest tragedy for any pastor is to watch people who have such potential in their life just buy a cheap lunch one day and then miss out on their race. And we like God want to be gracious and bring everyone back in. But why waste the time on this stuff? Let's get down and do our job. Let's get stuck into what God has called us to do. Let's commit to the future of this house and make sure it happens. Let's be a part of God's great ordained moment for this house, our lives, and the destiny we have. Amen.